Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are around the world, and a very warm welcome to all for attending today's session, IMRF Dialogue Series, Youth Innovations in Migration, Generating Positive Impacts and Communities, co-organized by UNICEF, UNMJCY, and IOM. By way of introduction, my name is Zehan, and I'm the East Asia focal point at MGCY Migration, and I'm delighted to be serving as the moderator for this panel. Today, I'm especially excited to be joined by 8 amazing speakers from these organizations on today's panel, where they will share more about the critical role of young people as innovators, change makers, and entrepreneurs, and as partners in creating solutions and generating positive impacts for migrants and communities of origin, transit, and destination through innovative ideas and actions. Together, they will also highlight how young people are at the forefront of contributing to the implementation of the Global Compact for Migration's whole of society approach, addressing migration in all of its dimensions through multi-stakeholder partnerships, including with diasporas and local communities. With that, I'd like to first start off this panel with a couple of questions. So you will hopefully soon see some poll questions which you can answer. Everyone in this audience can answer pertaining to migration, and you can pick your preferred choice. And yes, you should be able to see questions and pick your choice. The first question being, why did you choose to join this webinar today? I hope everyone has had a look at the question and submitted a response. Whether you are a young person interested in IMRF, you want to learn more about working with young people as partners, or perhaps youth innovation and migration as somewhat new to you, but interested to learn more. Perhaps we can now move on to the second question. Which is on what the audience thinks is the biggest challenge young people in your community face in having a seat at the table in discussions on migration. Whether it's because young people's talents and potential are not recognized, or the fact that young people lack education, training opportunities that equip them with the skills to participate, or perhaps that facilitating youth empowerment takes time and resources, and both are often scarce. Curious to find out what the audience thinks, because I think they're all very relevant options, which the speakers will address later on. I hope everyone has had some time to look through this question. And if that's the case, perhaps we can move on to the final question, which will be shown in just a second. Yes. So moving on from the challenges, the final question pertains to what the audience thinks is the biggest priority to support youth innovation in migration. Whether it's listening to and learning from young people and taking them seriously as partners, providing empowerment and skills building opportunities for the most vulnerable youth who have talent but lack opportunity, or giving young people a seat at the table in global migration processes like the IMRF. And I must say that these options are clearly not mutually exclusive, but we're just curious to hear what the audience thinks is the biggest priority. Great. I hope the audience has had some time to look through this question. And if we do, perhaps we can now view the results of the poll to give everyone a sense of how everyone felt answering those. Great. So we have a lot of responses. Thank you very much for your participation. On the first question, why did you choose to join this webinar today? Most people in the audience put that they want to learn more about how to better work with young partners to address and optimize the benefits of migration. Had some responses on that the audience are young people wishing to learn more, or that these are concepts that are new, but I'm sure the speakers will shed light on them later on. Moving on to the second question. So most people believe that the biggest challenge young people face in having a seat at the table is in fact the third option, which is that facilitating youth empowerment takes time and resources and both are often scarce, which I think is an accurate reflection of the migration advocacy journeys of a lot of us here actively involved in the scene. And I'm sure that our partners and our speakers will share a little bit more about how they have taken the time and resources to engage in youth empowerment later on. And perhaps moving to the third question. On what is the biggest priority to support youth innovation in migration? This is a very interesting question because we have 3 young speakers later on who will share about their youth innovations in migration. And I think this very much aligns with the audience response, the most popular of which is that providing empowerment and skills building opportunities for most vulnerable youth is especially important. I'm sure the innovations of our youth speakers later on will testament to this. And also the fact that young people believe in the need to treat them seriously as partners and giving them a voice at the table like IMRF. Thank you very much for answering the questions. And with that, I'm really happy to be introducing our first speaker for his keynote address, Mr. Roberto Giocanzo Comas from the IOM. He is currently the Senior Regional Labor Mobility and Human Development Specialist for South America. And he has been working with migrants and members of various diaspora groups for over a decade, with a focus on civil participation in migration and development. Before taking up responsibilities in the regional office for South America, he covered the Middle East and North Africa from IOM's regional office in Cairo, after arriving to the region as head of project coordination in IOM's country office in Egypt. Prior to this, he also served as project manager in the field of diaspora engagement at IOM Kosovo, as well as head of project development. This builds on his work with Latin American migrant communities in Belgium on how they contribute to their countries of origin through the NGO Service de Formación América Latina, apologies for my pronunciation. That in turn was informed by his engagement with Latin American migrants in the US to promote their participation in the civil and political sphere of their new home country under the auspices of the National Council of La Raza. As a migrant and part of the Puerto Rican diaspora, he plans to continue his work strengthening the positive link between migration and development by empowering migrants to be actors for social change and economic growth. It's an honor to have you with us, Roberto, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sihan. It's actually my honor to be here in this webinar, even though I think by no definition of the word am I a member of the youth, but I definitely very much support many of the responses to those very difficult questions to answer about the need to empower and to give voice, a space for youth to share their voice. As I mentioned, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with this webinar on youth innovations in migration, generating positive impacts for migrants and communities. It's a pleasure to work with UNICEF and the UNMGCY, I hope I got that right, as partners in this webinar. I think we all innately understand that youth have a role as innovators. They bring new ideas and new perspectives to old problems and new problems. So I think that that space is something that we all understand. But I also want to emphasize the role that we see for migrants as innovators as well. One of the statistics I always love to cite is that 44% of Fortune 500 companies in the US, those are basically the largest companies in the largest economy in the world, were founded either by migrants or their children. And this percentage goes up even higher when we're talking about the high-tech sector specifically. So there we see across the globe that migrants also bring new ideas and new perspectives to their host communities and drive innovation, entrepreneurship in ways that local communities don't necessarily have the same opportunity to do. So when we talk about youth and migration, I think we have basically a double innovative spirit that we can tap into. When, from the IOM perspective, we engage with youth from all different perspectives, from addressing marginalized youth to empowering the potential of youth as change makers, as is the topic of this webinar. In the first case, I'd like to share an example from my time in the Middle East, North Africa. We developed, along with USAID, a program called Forsati in Morocco, where we developed a comprehensive approach to support the inclusion of at-risk youth through supporting 52 local organizations to create one-stop shops that provide youth-directed services and empowered a number of youth leaders within their community. Overall, the program supported 28,000 at-risk youth with socioeconomic reintegration services. In terms of empowerment, definitely, I think it was mentioned by Zihan, the role of diaspora youth, and we see this as definitely one of the key areas that we need to continue working and supporting as a target group. We know that diaspora youth in particular, especially second and third generation diaspora, have a lot to offer because of their level of integration in their host communities, but also often there's a heightened interest in connecting and supporting and giving back to their home country to strengthen those ties and that sense of identification with the country of origin. One of the interesting initiatives we've been implemented in this regard is a campaign called Look Forward and Give Back. It was started in Madagascar with Malagasy youth, primarily in Europe, but around the world, that started their own development projects with counterparts in Madagascar. And now this model is being expanded to the Caribbean. Another interesting initiative looking at migrants and how they support innovation in their home countries of destination, sorry, not their home countries, their host countries, is an initiative that we developed with the Shoka organization. It started in Argentina, where it was launched as Hola Argentina, but now has expanded to a program or a platform called Hola America that looks at mapping ecosystems for innovation and supporting specific innovative initiatives on migration governance, now covering both Argentina and Chile. And through this initiative, over 300 local initiatives were mapped, and 36 were supported directly. And of those 36, nearly half of them were led by youth in these countries. And just in terms of innovation, I also wanted to share one more example from Latin America, where I'm based. In Guatemala, in response to COVID-19, we developed an app that actually provides information for migrants and especially returnees that are looking for work in public and private sector. And in addition to being a job portal, it provides entrepreneurship skills and also certification opportunities. Innovation is in IOM's DNA. We're a decentralized organization. I remember our former Deputy Director General, Lara Thompson, once mentioned that when she looked into innovation in IOM, it wasn't how to make it happen, because it was happening everywhere. It was how to systematize it and make it scalable. And we've actually identified innovation as an area for institutional investment within IOM's strategic vision. And we're implementing it through a systematic and organizational approach that embodies openness and challenges the status quo. In particular, we have invested in the creation of a specific innovation and knowledge management unit that'll be based in Geneva and our HQ. I don't want to take more of your time because I'm really eager, and I'm sure you all are, to hear from our youth innovators. So I'll share some links to some of the initiatives I mentioned in the chat, and I look forward to hearing all your inputs and really excited about this exchange. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Roberto, for that excellent address. I think I learned a lot from your address on the importance of supporting young people and migrants and seeing them not just as victims of their circumstance, but also, more importantly, as entrepreneurs, as innovators, and as agents of change themselves. And I think our youth speakers, who I will now introduce, will definitely share a little bit more on that. So with that, we move to the first panel of youth speakers, which I'm absolutely delighted to introduce. A few of them are my colleagues from MGCY Migration as well. But first of all, I have the honor of introducing the panel, Youth as Partners in Finding Solutions, what young people are contributing, and opportunities for youth to engage in the IMRF process. So as we know, the IMRF process stands for the International Migration Review Forum, and it is an opportunity to discuss the progress made in realizing each of the 23 objectives of the Global Compact for Migration. And we have here 3 youth speakers who will shed light on how they have been engaging in the IMRF process. First of all, we have with us Mahmoud Al-Ahmadi, the Liaison Officer for Human Rights and Peace Issues for the International Federation of Medical Students Association. Mahmoud is a 6-year medical student at Alexandria University in Egypt. Originally from Iraq, he is currently serving as the Liaison Officer for Human Rights and Peace Issues in the International Federation of Medical Students Associations, and he is especially involved and interested in global health, ethics, and human rights issues, including migrants and refugees' health, discrimination and inclusion, violence against healthcare, medical peace work, health equity, and the right to health through training and non-formal education, as well as advocacy and policymaking. Mahmoud, welcome to the panel. And second, I have the honor of introducing Bosa Sabile, who is a revolutionary intellectual young woman. She is an admitted attorney, notary public of the courts of Botswana, and she is a writer, feminist, and human rights defender with 5 years experience in social justice advocacy. She has worked with a wide array of international organizations advocating on issues relating to gender justice, sexual reproductive health rights, peace and security issues, as well as human migration and governance. Our third speaker is Sarah Bad, the MENA regional focal point for the Migration, Youth and Children platform. Sarah is a youth activist and public speaking enthusiast and passionate about policy advocacy. She is currently the MENA regional focal point and a team lead based in Egypt with the MGCR Migration. And in this role, she and her MENA team have been engaged in the first Global Compact on Migration consultations in the Arab region, having participated in the Global Forum on Migration and Development in 2021. And additionally, Sarah is the World Youth Forum's official spokeswoman and a member of the organizing committee since 2017, a platform designed for youth to recommend views on pressing global challenges, including migration issues. And finally, she is also a fellow of the Garb Foundation East-West Art of Dialogue initiative, which aims to build bridges of collaboration towards sustainable peace and cross-cultural understanding. And she currently holds a master's in energy finance from Imperial College London. Mahmoud, Bosa, and Sarah, it's a pleasure to have you all on this panel. And perhaps the first question that I would have for all 3 of you, and a question that the participants, the audience in this panel would like to find out more is how can we work with youth and young people like yourselves as partners in finding solutions on migration? And perhaps we can start with Mahmoud, followed by Bosa and Sarah.
Super, thank you so much, Zihan, and hello, everyone. So I think this is a very crucial question to start with, reflecting on it from us as a youth perspective, but also reflecting on it towards what we expect out of adults. And I think it's very important to highlight that young people are at the core of prosperous societies, both as building blocks of the present before the future, but also as essential driving and enacting agents of development and change. And in the context of migration specifically, youth are crucial as catalysts for social inclusion and integration, which is very, very crucial for migrants for their livelihood and for their functionality. Hence, this requires collaboration with youth as a must, not as an option. Now, partnerships, to go back to, we need to start with a definition. So partnerships means acknowledging the role of young people as mutual and equal to adults in decision-making, in learning, in contributing, in advocating, in every part of the life, in every aspect of life. This entails active participation and also entails empowerment of young people to play a vital role in their own development, as well as in that of their community. So not only as receivers or as beneficiaries, but rather as active agents in the whole process of decision-making, of creation, and of innovation. Now, we usually, when we speak about health education in the health field, we reflect on three types of factors that affects behavior, that affects the development of let's say, certain projects or certain ideals. And these are three factors: so predisposing factors, enabling factors, and reinforcing factors. And I would like to take this perspective when reflecting on partnerships with youth. So in order to be, for adults and for also fellow young people to partner with each other, there should exist these three factors. So there should be predisposing factors, and these basically are the effective factors, the cognitive factors that contribute to motivation for people to act. And now people have this motivation by nature, have this drive and energy to take action and to partner and collaborate. However, this is missing from usually the adult sides, with the stigma, with the misinformation, with the negative notions surrounding youth, the perception of them as vulnerable and as dependent, which is something that needs to be shifted in order to create this predisposing environment, shifting the narratives towards youth to recognize them for their value and their contribution to the community. The second type of factors are enabling factors. So basically, after the environment, the predisposing factors exist, or the predisposing environment exists, now you need enabling environment so that the agent starts capitalizing on the behavior, on what you want to achieve, and in this scenario, partnerships. So this entails skills, this entails the resources, this entails the optimal environment. And speaking about partnerships, youth have the ideas, have the knowledge, have the skills. However, this needs nurturing and strengthening, because youth are in a phase of their lives where they are still growing, they are still developing. So there is a need for youth to be empowered and to be provided with the platforms to learn and to grow, while also ensuring that this is a safe and nurturing environment, so that they are able and have the competency to contribute meaningfully, and to perhaps also lead, not only contribute, to lead initiatives and innovations. This also entails creating accessible platforms as well, and avenues for youth to engage and to contribute, whether in decision-making, whether in advocacy, or whether in entrepreneurship as well. This entails putting a seat for them in the table. This entails allowing them to speak and hearing them, which is what was mentioned in question 3 as one of the main priorities: listening to young people and hearing them. Also, as we mentioned, empowerment. And the last factor is reinforcing. So after enabling young people to contribute to partnerships, to be an active agent, you need to reinforce this, to have this sense of sustainability in these kind of partnerships and in the empowerment. And this comes through trust, through listening to the feedback of young people, to their opinions, and providing sustainable means of communication for them to reflect their own opinions in the future. This also requires commitment and friendliness, let me say, from the decision makers towards youth, and respecting and underpinning their rights as a crucial member of the community to start with, before looking to them as a specific group, as young people or as a vulnerable group, whatever the naming is. So I would perhaps leave it there for my colleagues also to bring on their perspectives. And that's over from my side.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud. I think that is an important statement, recognizing the different factors or conditions for meaningful youth engagement in migration. And in your case, health education, the importance to have environmental enabling as well as reinforcing factors to facilitate youth participation and involvement. I will now move on to our second speaker, Bosa, on this question of how can young people be engaged as partners of change in migration. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sihan. All right, so really, I'd like to also note that I am the Africa Regional Focal Point at MGCY and the GCM team lead. So I think it's very important that I note this, because then I really want to put the point across that it's within these roles that I realize the critical role that youth can play or youth already play in migration advocacy. Now, how can we work with young people? Young people, as the previous speaker has already indicated, already have the knowledge. They have the skills. Now, how can we meet youth where they already are? How can we meet them halfway? And that is really tapping into the skills that youth already have, tapping into the platforms that youth are already using in their advocacy, be it your social media platforms. And that is what really the majority of youth are using today to put the point across, to share knowledge, at the end of the day. So how can we meet youth? That is how we can meet our fellow young people, by meeting them where they are, by now bringing the platforms to them, rather creating a safe space for youth as well, and creating opportunities for young people, and not just using the same rigid, if I may use that word, rigid ways and platforms or opportunities, the same rigid way of doing things that young people have now moved away from. It's very important for the stakeholders, other various stakeholders, to then really open doors and create opportunities, rather, that tap into that. Further, I just further want to speak to the other ways, rather, to maybe just give a couple of examples of my experience, more than anything, on how youth are using the skills and the knowledge that we have already stated that they already have. Basically, I've seen during the multi-stakeholder, the GCM meetings, getting messaging from youth in order to draft your policy briefs was, I would say it was very seamless. Seamless in that youth are now using the internet more than ever. Young people are using the internet, be it your surveys, be it your, if you should go on TikTok as well, you're going to see that young people are actually at the forefront of the advocacy, advocating for migration. So maybe this is just what we need to do, or this is what other stakeholders rather need to do in order to work with young people. And as already stated, meet them where they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bosa, for your insightful thoughts. I think, Bosa, you mentioned the need to ensure that young people who are already at the forefront of advocacy are being supported with resources, and the fact that partners should be meeting them where they are. I think that's a very important point to come across, to convey, especially because young people nowadays are especially active, they're especially involved in social media, in new and original platforms, which they are using, which they're leveraging on in order to advocate for migration communities. And I think it's very important that our partners recognize that as well. I'll turn the question now to Sarah on how we can work with young people as partners in finding solutions on migration. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Zihan, and thanks for, I'm very glad to be part of this panel discussion. I will try my best to keep my answers concise and to the point, and to give you my 2 cents on everything. So just to reiterate and add to my colleagues' messages, sometimes in order to include young people as partners, you have like 2 perspectives. You have young migrants and you have other young people who you also want to empower to deliver the message on behalf of other young migrants. Sometimes you don't just have to listen to the young migrant telling you their stories and, they're sharing their experience or their struggles, but you also want to advocate and to raise the awareness across that other young people should also carry this sort of like duty to convey the same messages across as well. So I believe, yes, some people do have awareness, but still we want to work on raising a level of awareness that everyone should advocate for the cause. And the second fold to this equation, I would say, by developing young people's potential. And of course, to do that, we need to provide opportunities. And from my own personal perspective, I see that the repeated 2 needed opportunities are either education or funding. And education can span a lot of things, really. Using technology platforms such as Facebook, TikTok is growing, and it's actually popularly used by a lot of youth nowadays. Technology platforms and giving access to these technology platforms, and then raising the awareness and providing educational tools to be able to use technology as an enabler. And of course, innovative solutions are key catalysts in building this sort of like outreach. And then, funding opportunities is very critical to kind of support a lot of initiatives, whether it's in MENA, for example, or from other parts around the world. Having this sort of like financial support can tend to give people the liberty to innovate and come up with ideas that doesn't necessarily go with the mainstream ideas, but they can find that whatever ideas they have, they will have the means to make it come to life and then support other people as well. And I think that's my 2 cents on the question. Over to you, Z.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think it's a very noteworthy point that it's our collective responsibility to raise awareness for migration issues. And also thank you for specific ways, such as education and funding, to maximize youth potential and really make sure that young people are given the resources to advocate for change. Moving on to the next question, I know all speakers have actually touched on this a little bit, which is that young people are already at the forefront of advocacy. But speaking from your own experience, could each of you kind of highlight what are young people already contributing in terms of addressing the challenges and maximizing the opportunities of migration? And perhaps we can first start off with Bosa, followed by Sarah, and then back to Mam.
All right, thank you. Yes, so in terms of what young people are currently doing to maximize these opportunities, young people are at the forefront really of so many issues relating to migration. As I've already touched on previously, there's been young people participate in your multi-stakeholder consultations. Young people give the youth perspective. Young people are active in getting the data on the ground. Young people are active in it's no longer just, it's not just social media advocacy. It's now on the ground at the grassroots level. Young people are creating awareness. They're creating it's knowledge sharing. You know, they're creating safe spaces for young migrants, especially, or rather, as well as young people in the diaspora. They also play a critical role in rather shedding a light or on the rights of migrants, both, yes, in the diaspora and internally displaced people, IDPs, yes. So these are some of the things that, or some of the critical roles that young people are playing. I also want to touch base on, because this space as well talks about really the creativeness. Young people as well are going beyond that and writing. You know, I love seeing young people blog posts and everything, where now we are creating awareness on what's happening on the ground, what's happening today, your Twitter spaces. That is work that's being done by young people for awareness and knowledge sharing at the end of the day. And another critical aspect is youth-led organizations or young people-led organizations that are also assisting on the ground, that are helping, be it by assisting with services, right? Assisting migrants with services, certain services, or at least being the middleman between migrants and respective governments and states. So these are some of the critical roles that I can point out that young people are really doing on the ground. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, so my personal take on this is that you know, with my team across the MENA region, we've carried out or we've participated in the GCM consultations, and we've been able to kind of reach to numerous youth from around the region. So I would say that we've seen a lot of initiatives that are either youth-led or youth-supporting initiatives coming from the region. And these were great examples of how youth are coming across and delivering. So whether it's, you know, helping other migrants get access to services, or promoting migrant rights in accessing workforce, or continuing education in host countries. There's been a lot of initiatives that needed us to kind of shed light over the work that they've been doing, the great examples. And throughout the policy brief that we've published, we made sure to kind of highlight this sort of like successful examples to kind of motivate other initiatives as well to come out from the MENA region and also from other regions as well. And for example, I can just name quite like a couple of these initiatives, with each one of them having like a specific focus or addressing a specific need. The Lotus Flower from Iraq focuses on women and young girls empowerment, providing, or helping them become self-sustained in a way by providing funding opportunities, or helping helping them to get in contact with other businesses, or being a business incubator, or helping them develop their startups. So giving a sort of like a financial freedom in that sense to young migrants and refugees alike. There were other initiatives. There was this one initiative, for example, called Insaniyat. It helps young migrants get educated about their rights. So it supports, young migrant workers across Qatar and Kuwait, which was a great initiative to kind of help people know that they have rights and these rights can be met. They just need to be educated, and they can also provide them with services that help them overcome language barriers, for example. So this is very critical when you're trying to support young migrants and when you're having young people or youth-led initiatives doing this. It kind of like crosses barriers and makes the process a lot easier. A great example that I also want to highlight, a campaign on raising awareness on, migration issues and also helping fight discrimination against young migrants is the Let's Talk Migration initiative, which was beautiful in every sense. And it helped, bring stories of young people and young migrants, whether they are bonding over food or bringing something that is from their own culture or bringing an example or something that they would like to see changed in the communities that they live in. It was a great type of or example of an initiative that raises awareness on migration issues in general. And I think these sort of initiatives, having them is a great example of how young people are helping in their communities or helping overall to support migrants in the region. And I think by bringing these initiatives forward and also finding similar initiatives, we can create a ripple effect moving forwards. So yeah, that's it. Thank you, Z.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing all those examples. And I believe there was a question in the chat asking you if you could share the policy brief that you just mentioned. So feel free to follow up. Mahmoud, over to you.
Super. I will try to reflect on what we do in IFMSA and the International Federation of Medical Students Associations. So I would divide our, let's say, main activities into 3 different areas, the first of which is peer education. So this involves what we do globally, but involves what our national branches does as well on the ground. In terms of peer education, we have dedicated workshops that address stigma and discrimination, and this tries to tackle the, let's say, the drivers of discrimination, of stigmatization, of prejudice, misinformation, and tries to establish a culture of respect and inclusion in young people in general. And this includes also towards migrants as one of the groups being targeted by let's say discrimination and stigmatization. Aside from this workshop, we also have dedicated workshops on sensitive and inclusive healthcare to migrants. Through this workshop, we try to educate young people, young healthcare providers, medical students, about the specific needs of migrants and refugees in general. What kind of vulnerable situations they are subjected to, and how can they as healthcare providers be sensitive towards these health needs, be conscious about how can they provide an appropriate and an acceptable service as well, so that they meet and underpin the right to health of migrants. And the third type of peer education we do is through intercultural learning and trainings. We try to emphasize on intercultural education because this is also a matter of, intra-community communication, but also between the different communities. And this is a very important skill in order to ensure the inclusion, ensure the integration of migrants in the community, to have this intercultural competence from the different aspects, from young people who are, citizens of the destination countries, but also from migrants themselves. And finally, we also try to address human rights education. Just as perhaps Sarah mentioned, we try to educate people about their rights, and this includes migrants as well, and try to highlight that you have these specific rights, you have these mechanisms to uphold your rights, so that they are aware fully of what they can and what they're entitled to, what they can hold others accountable for, and hence they can claim their rights, which is very crucial. Aside from peer education, we also work on on-ground interventions or actions, so provisions of services, and this is more through our national branches. This is done through community-based campaigns and interventions, usually in collaboration and partnerships, in partnership with the different stakeholders on the ground, which is a good example of proper partnerships with young people. The aim of such community-based interventions is to bring the health services closer to the migrant community, so as to provide them with these essential health services that they need in a appropriate manner, in a properly communicated manner, crossing the language barriers, and also providing them with sufficient quality in terms of these services. This includes in terms of health education, of course, but also in terms of provision of basic services, basic health services. In terms of also interventions, we have volunteering programs and exchange programs. The aim of these volunteering programs is to, one, address this intercultural kind of learning environment, but also try to teach young people about this diversity in the needs of the different populations, especially migrant populations. And then on the other hand, while them learning, they also try to contribute to the provision and to the promotion of the health services towards migrants. Through our exchanges programs, we also try to promote student mobility as one way of breaking the barriers and shifting the narratives about the negative narratives about migration. Through introducing these students, these medical students, these young people to each other from different countries, bringing them to experience these new communities, experience the diversity people have in their thoughts and in their lives and their cultures. And hence this creates more of acceptability, more of a culture of respect towards the others, hence creating also this acceptability and this more positive narrative towards mobility, human mobility and migration. And the last aspect we work on is through advocacy, and we also have our own policy documents on migrants' health, on forced displacement and health as well, and on peace and health. These are also drivers of migration, human mobility, and we try, and especially also this happens on national level as well. Our members try to engage with the decision mechanisms in their governments or in their regions, so that they can also contribute to policy shaping, which is also an important and crucial factor to promote positive change for migrants. So this is quite a brief of what I have to say and our national members do. Over and back to you, Zihan.
Thank you so much for sharing these collective of best practices, if I may say so, on working with young people and maximizing opportunities of migration. With that, I'd like to turn our attention to our final question. And in the interest of time, perhaps all speakers can just give a short response to this, which is that a lot of young people, having seen the work that all three of you are doing right now, might be interested in, either now or in the future, to engage directly with the IMRF process. I know the IMRF process is complex. There are a lot of stakeholders involved. There are a lot of discussions going on. But in your opinion, and for the benefit of the audience who's joining us, many of whom might be new and not familiar with this process, what is the best way, or what are the best opportunity for them to get involved in if they would like to engage with this IMRF process? And perhaps I'd like to start off with Sarah, and then back to Bosa, and then finally to Mahmoud.
Yeah, well, I believe the opportunities to engage are numerous, really. And we've all established the norm that youth participation is vital to the process and is key to the process. And it's at the end of the day, usually youth energy helps implement and achieve the change that we all speak about. So I believe by having youth sharing their experiences in the field, whether through volunteership or civil work, or sharing their personal stories as young migrants and their journeys, this is one way they can contribute to the process, sharing their own inputs. And from another side, we need to provide more room and space for dialogue and engagement, with a special focus and dedication to bringing young people to the table, so that we can have their voices at the table, and highlighting all of the best practices, which can serve as a great motivator. I would suggest also having a sort of civil society alliance. And I think it would be great to have in every country or in every region a sort of an alliance that kind of groups together all of these initiatives and all of the NGOs working across the region, so that they will have one representative voice that they can usually consult with. And it will be easy to kind of establish links through a network. And I think that way we can ensure an active participation in the IMRF. My personal take is that I see the accreditation and having an accredited person to kind of contribute or participate in the IMRF can sometimes hinder that, and it can be limiting in a way. So maybe this can be revisited in future, but that's my personal take. Thank you, Z.
Thank you very much. And over to you, Bosa.
Thank you. Okay, so in my opinion, I think the steps that youth can take to be part of this IMRF process could be, obviously, you're going to do the work on the ground. You're going to gain insights, but also partnerships are very important. It's important that youth-led organizations and youth organizations come together and form partnerships, such that now we are not all doing, it tends to be quite disheartening, so to speak, that there are about quite a number of youth organizations all doing the same thing. Whereas the impact could be more if we could come together, partner up, collaborate. Partnerships and collaboration are very important. But also another important aspect is don't be afraid to reach out. If you want to be part of these processes, don't be afraid to send that email, to reach out to the relevant person, to the focal person, and share whatever insights that you may have, or whatever insights that you have collected, or whatever data you've collected in your youth organization that may be of importance to the whole process and to the partners or to the relevant people who are heading that process. So that's really my key take there. Partnerships, collaboration, and don't be afraid to reach out at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bosa. And over to you, Mahmoud.
Okay, super. I think that the biggest opportunity starts from the grassroots, from action on the grassroots, from local youth, or like youth on the ground, in contributing to the IMRF process, because this is where the biggest change happens. This is where the biggest impact happens, and this is where what we are reviewing through the IMRF happens. So we need to start from the very grassroots before speaking about engaging with the IMRF on the global level, because this is only a review process. And yes, there is some decision making in there, in the progress declaration and the commitments outlined. However, this is only, I would say, technical, while the biggest change happens on the ground. So I would rather also emphasize on what has been mentioned by Bosa already and by Sarah. One, and most importantly, mainstreaming efforts. I think, as mentioned earlier, youth have the energy, youth have the ideas. They want to take action. They want to contribute positively to the communities, to their own communities, whether these are young migrants or also young, let's say, non-migrant populations as well, non-migrant youth. However, this leads to parallel working. So each and every group of youth, each and every organization perhaps starts working on parallel to each other, perhaps sometimes conflicting and overlapping with each other. And this is not optimal in terms of impact. Also, not optimal in terms of reaching the objectives we want to reach. So this is very important and very crucial to realize, that we need to be collaborative and open to collaborate with each other first as young people, first and foremost, before also collaborating with the decision makers and duty bearers, rather than doing sporadic work. The second thing is thinking strategically. Now, we have in the GCM, we have objectives identified. Under these objectives, there are commitments. In the IMRF, there are commitments that are being outlined by that hopefully will be adopted by member states. It's crucial for us as young people to also do our part in contributing to these commitments from our side, from what we could do as actions, but also in giving feedback to our duty bearers, to our decision makers, but also giving them or holding them accountable for what they committed to take action to, because this is important once again. And all of these commitments, all of these actions happen on the grassroots, on the ground, before we speak about them in the IMRF. So I would just once again summarize what I mentioned in 2 words. Partnerships is crucial. Being collaborative, we need to be open to collaboration and cooperative in our approaches. And we also should not work in parallel from each other as young people. We should not work in parallel from our decision makers and duty bearers, but rather support them and support each other in the progress towards a safe, orderly, and regular migration. Over and back to you, Zihan.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud, for your insights. And thank you to all 3 speakers for highlighting the importance of a grassroots mobilization and advocacy, as well as the importance of collaboration and partnerships across all youth initiatives and organizations, so that we collectively will be able to advocate for the communities, for the migrant communities that we stand for. And once again, I'd like to thank all 3 speakers, Mahmoud, Bosa, and Sarah, for their contributions. I would kindly invite you to stay in the panel to take questions later on. And right now, we will move to the second part of this youth panel, which is on showcasing innovations by 3 youth innovators on migration-related issues. And with that, I'd like to introduce the 3 youth innovators in this particular panel and give them 5 minutes each to share a little bit more about their innovations in this sector. First and foremost, we have with us Alejandro Delhi, who is the director of Xenophobia Barometer, a platform that proposes and develops citizen advocacy processes to achieve greater impact in Colombia. Currently, he is working to promote the integration of Venezuelan migrants and refugees in Latin America, impacting more than 115,000 people through artistic and cultural manifestations, public conversations, and social media. As the co-founder of Xenophobia Barometer, the first platform in Latin America to use social listening and machine learning to analyze the narratives around migrants and refugees in social media to positively transform them. In the 2021 Global Forum on Migration and Development, Alejandro was awarded first place in the Youth Leadership and Innovation Award, and he's a global shaper from the World Economic Forum. Alejandro, welcome to this panel, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zihan, and thank you, Veronica, and thank you, Carla. It's been so long since I saw you both, and I love to see you. And thank you to everyone that joined this amazing event. And thank you to UNGCY and IOM always for the opportunities to continue to elevate the voices of young people, of young migrants and refugees. Zihan already said it, but my name is Alejandro. The same as Veronica, a Venezuelan migrant, that is a Venezuelan forcibly displaced migrant currently in Colombia, although I'm currently in Venezuela, which is weird for us. So my story begins as the story of many other young migrants and refugees with a dream to better understand how could we integrate migrants and refugees into our communities. And there was a particular issue that worried me a lot, that was xenophobia. We saw an increase of online xenophobic discourses in Colombia, and we saw how certain public figures and media use xenophobic discourses to engage with the audiences and to elevate hate speech. Nevertheless, although we had some very big campaigns to promote integration and to fight xenophobia, we didn't know if those campaigns were really having a positive impact in transforming the narratives. So we created the Xenophobia Barometer, which now is currently measuring the levels of xenophobia in Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Chile. And we're currently and that's some major news. We're currently exploring Central America, starting with Mexico. Yay! And it's been a journey. I remember 2 years ago when I applied to the Youth Innovation Award. We were currently just in Colombia. And when we're talking about youth innovation and the current partnerships, I will say there are 3 things that really support our work to increase and to expand at a regional level. First, finding the appropriate partnerships. We partnered with Universidad Externado de Colombia, which is a university in Colombia, and with Fundación Interpreta, that is an organization specialized in machine learning and big data. And together, through this partnership, we were able to obtain the best from academia, from Advocacy, that is my organization, the right to not obey, but also from machine learning and big data. And this partnership between technology, advocacy, and academia allowed us to increase our impact. What we did was find a proper partner in each of the countries. So we partnered with a university in Peru, in Ecuador, in Chile, and with an advocacy organization in all of these other countries. That's the first. The second one, we bet on young migrants and refugees. We are a team mainly based of migrants and refugees, and we bet on the potential of us, of migrants, to really solve the problems. We always say nothing for migrants without migrants. And I think that's a motto for everyone that is working with young migrants and refugees. And that is something that funders really seek to. And normally when there are these organizations that are not led or don't have a majority of people that are young migrants and refugees. And when you do have it, you have like this special characteristic that is just being coherent. I'm having a real connection with your purpose. And finally, we always look and we always strive for continuing in innovation. So we started with one algorithm, and from there we have developed or are in the process of developing other algorithms to measure not only Twitter and web pages, that was the beginning, but also Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. So we started with something, but we need to continue developing new tools and new ideas in order to be really innovative in the public agenda. Xenophobia is not going to stop. That's awful. But we can really make the difference in having real data to take timely decisions. And to change the narrative, we also know that it's a long time process. Nevertheless, what we need is to make sure that young people and new generations know the problems behind xenophobia and how xenophobia can really harm our democracies. That is something we have seen in different countries in Europe and in America. So to wrap everything up, I'll say partnerships, I say be coherent with your voice, continue to innovate, and also thank you to UNGCY and to all the partners, because these opportunities to showcase our voices do really make the difference. And back to you, Sihan.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. And congratulations on your achievement. I think what you shared about the xenophobia barometer is such an important initiative that can be scaled up across other countries as well. And moving on, I'm happy to introduce our next youth innovator, Kastner, who is the founder of Move Europe and executive board member, as well as project coordinator of the German NGO behind this program, Migration Miteinander. She has 2 years of work experience as integration manager in Germany and more than 8 years of voluntary work in the field of migration and inclusion in different European countries, mainly in Italy, France, and Germany, with unaccompanied minors and in reception centers, as well as empowerment programs. Carla holds a BA in European Studies and MA in Intercultural Mediation and Inter-Mediterranean Dialogue, mainly abroad in Spain, France, and Italy. And besides her personal experience that made her passionate to engage for equal opportunities and rights for all young people in Europe, her personal background and family story strongly contributes to the will to make the world understand that migration, and in particular the right of freedom of mobility, is an asset and not a threat. Welcome to the panel, Carla, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zihan, and sorry for these complicated German words that you pronounce very well. And it's nice to see you, Alejandro and Veronica, and hello, everyone else. So before I start explaining, before I share what is Move Europe actually about and why we do it and what it stands for, I would like to throw two initial questions into the room, especially to those of us who are based in Europe. So the first one would be, what does freedom of movement actually mean to you? And the second one is, do you actually believe or think that you fully enjoy the right of freedom of movement? So when it comes to myself, as a young European citizen, actually in the European space, I would say that I have actually full right of freedom of movement, which gives me a lot of opportunities, access to a lot of opportunities when it comes to work and education. So for example, when I don't find work in my country, I can move to another country, settle down and look for a job or for studies. But not all young people in the European Union or in Europe have actually access to these rights or have actually these same rights of freedom of movement. This is due, for example, to the current European asylum policies or also national policies, but it's also due to the fact that maybe they lack the information of what are actually the rights and opportunities in Europe when it comes to mobility and to access education and work in other countries. As a consequence, many of these young people for example, those that arrive newly to the European Union and that seek for asylum and protection in the European Union, find themselves in a situation where they are stuck in a country and they maybe don't have a perspective or they don't know actually what are their rights and opportunities, not only in this country, but in the European space. Or, for example, also they start to move within Europe, but as they don't know about their rights and opportunities, they do it in an irregular way and find themselves often in like a legal limbo or stuck again in another European country. And this is actually why we, a group of young people in 2017, we initiated the program Move Europe, with which we want to promote and also concretely support the mobility rights and opportunities of young people with a refugee background in Europe. How do we do this? On the one hand side, we try to provide information to young people with a refugee background in Europe about their mobility rights and opportunities. We try to research and provide info materials on what kind of opportunities actually they can access to. And on the other hand side, we accompany young people individually in the process of mobility from one country to the other. What do I mean with this? So, for example, if I'm a young refugee based in Italy and I would like to move to another country, you can get in touch with us and we support you to find an opportunity, for example, in Germany, let's say an apprenticeship, and we support you in all the steps to move successfully from one country to the other. So we see what are your needs and your interests, and then we support you with the visa procedure and to move to Germany with travel and language and so on. Maybe you're wondering, why is this all innovative, especially those that are not from Europe? So actually, there's not such a program existing in Europe yet that is supporting people in moving from one country to the other, and also promoting these rights and opportunities, because many people that newly arrive to Europe and seek for protection often have access to like a lot of information about how to successfully integrate in the country, what are your rights as an asylum seeker in this country, but they are not really informed about their opportunities in the European space. So we are kind of innovative in the sense that we are the only program so far that is doing that. And this is also accompanying young people really to move successfully from one country to the other. And when it comes to the policies that exist, actually, of course, there are some ways to move from one country to the other, for example, through family reunification or relocation. But these mechanisms often are not in the hands of the people themselves, because it's if you don't have a family member in another state, you cannot move. And if you do not relocate, if you're not relocated by a state, you are also not able to move. So we really try to offer an alternative to the current system and show a positive solution that actually, through this way of legal movement, we can give people a new perspective and have access to education and work also in the European space, and instead of being stuck in another country. And this is also what Move Europe stands for. So Move Europe, the name Move Europe stands for like supporting people to really move within Europe and realizing their dreams or their ideas and finding a new perspective. But it also stands for the fact that we would like to move European societies and also move like European policy makers towards a more human and more more fairer asylum system, maybe. So we are really having this aim also to advocate for freedom of movement or for more rights of freedom of movement within the European space, also for young people with refugee backgrounds.
Thank you very much, Carla, and congratulations on your achievement. I think Move Europe is such an inspiring initiative, and as someone based in Europe, I can definitely see the need for such an innovation. And I hope I'm very excited to see how it goes. Moving on to our final speaker, Veronica Montoya. Veronica is a 25-year-old migrant, originally from Venezuela. She has a law degree and a master's in migration studies, and is a researcher on migration policies and forced migration. She's a coordinator of Venezolanas Globales, I hope I pronounced that right, a Venezuelan women's platform. She's also a volunteer at the Clínica Jurídica para Refugiados Alade FOPA, and a focal point for Mexico within the UN Migration for Youth and Children platform. Veronica, thank you for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zihan, and sorry for the Spanish words as well. You did great. So good morning, everybody, and greetings from Mexico. Hi, Alejandro and Carla. I'm so happy to be here sharing the space with you. Before I start talking about what Venezolana Globales is as innovation, which is the main point of this presentation, I would like to share very quickly on how my journey on getting this space and this opportunity to be talking today here was. As already you have been mentioned, I'm originally from Venezuela. I was displaced in a very first moment to Colombia as well. I lived in Bogota before living in Mexico City, where I'm just right now. And during this journey, what actually happened is that I mainly lost all my networks, all my social networks and my human resources. And when I say this, is because at the moment I migrate, I lost all the contacts and mainly all the experience that I had in Venezuela. And I lost mainly like my degree as well, because at the moment I realized I was in Colombia, but I couldn't practice law because my degree was from another country. That's when I realized I was kind of living and being able to do nothing out there. So that's how the questions and the importance of these panels and the previous one, it's like, how can we bring opportunity to young migrants, considering different perspectives? They're not only young people already struggle by finding work, by finding student opportunities, by actually being considered and heard, and how we can double consider that they are migrant, they are foreigners, they probably know nobody, and they lack of papers, they lack of institutions being capable to understand their processes and situation to be considered and open a door or an opportunity for them. So that being said, what actually happened to me and how I get, for example, to be involved with Venezolanas Globales and MGCY is that I start knocking doors. I started to looking into internet, what opportunities, what organizations, what it's out there, then I can be involved and support through my knowledge and my experience other migrants, right? So that's how I get up being involved with Venezolanas Globales. And I want to talk a bit about what that is. And Venezolana Globales was born with the idea of Venezuelan migrant women helping other Venezuelan migrant women. It used to be a small dream that started being a Facebook group for networking. And now it's a platform that gathers and connects thousands of participants globally across multiple social media with presence in more than 70 cities worldwide. And this was possible thanks to the willingness of Venezuelan migrant women to create community and their ability to connect, organize, and gather a local community between each other, but also thanks to technologies and online communication tools. Social media and our website made our network quite more accessible to others. Venezolanas Globales, it's the first and most extensive network dedicated to making Venezuelan women visible abroad, while supporting and promoting them thousands networking, onboarding, and workshops tailored to our necessities. So beyond our data and numbers, the significant part of this community is how the network has impacted the lives of its members. Venezolana Globales contributes to migration and integration by making it smoother, by providing information, by providing a migrant network, which is, I already mentioned, it's super important. So we're also proud of this network because we make women feel connected to a community, not feeling alone out there in a foreign country sometimes, but that values sisterhood and understand their stories and backgrounds. We inspire, we empower, and raise their spirits, not only as women, but as migrants and change makers. We are continually growing. We expect to become a more direct opportunity and supportive platform for Venezuelan migrant women. We also hope to invest in our talent and operations. Both will be possible thanks to strategic alliance and the future financial support we're expecting to receive from third parties. So our spirit remains. Our goal is to continue supporting Venezuelan migrant women whenever they are, whoever they are, with whatever they need. So thank you very much for the opportunity and happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Veronica, and congratulations on your achievement. I think this platform that you have created is also such an important addition to supporting young migrants and migrants in general from and within and even beyond Venezuela. And it's really good to have you here as well. In the interest of time, we cannot take that many questions since we have about 5 minutes left. But I see that there was a question earlier on in the session by Dominika Gablikova, who I think asked a very kind of simple but general question on, first of all, she thanks the wonderful insights shared by everyone, all 6 youth speakers, and she'd like to ask how should she start if she'd like to start a project like this, especially if one does not have significant budget or capabilities. Do you have to set up an organization? Can it also be businesses, and what form would be the best? And I think this question also, speaks to the desire of young people to get involved, but sometimes the uncertainty and the difficulties in actually starting an organization like this. So perhaps if any of the youth speakers, Alejandro, Carla, or Veronica, would like to respond to that question and share insights.
I can start very quickly, and my main input, and based on my own experience and working fully online. I mean, I'm not enrolled in a organization working in a place. It's that start doing online tools and technology. Like you can start by even creating an Instagram account or TikTok account and sharing what you're aiming for, what's your goal, what's your vision, what you defend, or whatever your activism or action it is. And you will probably can start from there, trying to take some conversations with other stakeholders, with other young people who is actually being involved and being advocate for the topic that you're interested in. And I think networking is super important. That's how you actually end up being in other spaces like this and finding good other opportunities and stakeholders and sponsorships. So online tools and networking, that would be my 2 main stuff.
Maybe I can add, I agree with what Veronica said, totally. For me, also networking and finding other young people that would like to fight for the same aim as you is like crucial. And when it comes to being an NGO, like having a legal body, an NGO or not, even there you can start there are some funding programs. I don't know where you're based, but in Europe, there are some funding programs also for solidarity projects for young people where you even do not need to have a legal body and that you can apply for. So there are also these opportunities.
Great. I think with that, we will come to the end of this second discussion. Thank you very much, Alejandro, Carla, and Veronica, for sharing your initiatives, and we wish your projects every success. With that, also, I'd like to conclude my moderation of this panel and express our deep appreciation for our partners, IOM, UNICEF, and MGCY, for co-organizing this important IMRF dialogue on youth migration. Before this session ends, I'd like to hand the time over to Verena Knows, the global lead on migration from UNICEF, to deliver her closing address. To give a quick introduction, Verena is the global lead on migration and displacement at UNICEF, based in Switzerland. She previously held a position of senior policy advisor at UNICEF in Brussels, and before that, Verena co-founded the European Stability Initiative, a policy-oriented think tank active in the Balkans, Turkey, and the Caucasus. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and Verena.
Thank you so much, Sihan, and really nice to see familiar faces again here. It's great to see Veronica again, and Carla and Alejandro. And I haven't had the pleasure to meet Sarah in person or some of the other speakers, but I've had a chance to listen now. And it's been really, you don't know how refreshing it always is to actually step out of what often are really boring and dull meetings where UN officials speak to each other and we sort of move briefing notes from one to the other. We send each other, or we receive note verbal from governments, and we are discussing process, and you do wonder where the impact is, right? Is all of this adding up to change on the ground? And in the end, it's you and people on the ground whose lives either get better or stay the same, which is often difficult, or in many cases get worse because briefing notes themselves don't change the world, and even well-intentioned webinars alone don't change the world. So just to say that it's a real pleasure to be here, and Sihan, you did an excellent job moderating the discussion, and I know it was made a lot easier because you've had excellent speakers with you, but still, thank you. I also want to acknowledge our partners IOM, but most importantly, I really want to acknowledge our partners in the Major Group for Children and Youth. It's been really one of the best parts of my past 12 years, that intensifying partnership. And I'm sure our colleagues from the Major Group have learned their own lessons of how terribly bureaucratic UN agencies like UNICEF and IOM often tend to be. And please keep holding us to account, that we keep staying focused on what matters. So what matters, right? What did you actually, I think, put on the table for all of us to take forward together? I mean, I think the framing was already the exact right one. Youth and young people as innovators, change makers, entrepreneurs. And I heard many of you say that sometimes you feel like you're getting labeled, right? You are a migrant, or you are young, or you are the young woman, or you are the Venezuelan, or you are the, I mean, you probably get labeled even more than, it gets a little better, I can reassure you, when you get older and people don't know what to label you with anymore. But it can also be really frustrating to get labeled, because none of us are one thing only, right? Many and most of us are migrants or not migrants, are activists, are thinkers, are doers, are have one sex or another, have this hobby or that ambition, have that fear, have that. And I think that labeling is really critical, and I think it's important that together we help each other to break out of that labeling box that sometimes puts you into that box of, so now you have to be the young migrant, now you have to be the young woman migrant on the panel, and now you have to speak for all of them, as if there is such a thing as the young woman migrant or the young refugee. Or so I think the labeling is something that I heard you indirectly address in terms of recognizing the incredible diversity that exists in the migrant youth population, but also the incredible diversity that is there in terms of talents and ideas and innovation. And the biggest failure of bad migration policy is simply that we are stifling this talent, this pool of ideas, and that source of innovation. And look at Carla, look at Alejandro, look at you, Sihan, look at all of you. You are all doing things that other people, feel very proud of 20, 30 years into their career. And you're doing it sometimes on the side of actually either still studying or just surviving or restarting a new life. And as you said, Veronica, starting from scratch again and again. And sometimes again, because, mobility and movement, it doesn't just strip you often of dignity when it's not safe and regular. it does strip you of your network. It strips you of your social capital. It strips you of what makes life easy, when you know who to call, when you sometimes, when you don't even have your parents around, or not even your parents, your network, your contact, the person that you can ask. And even just figuring out which websites to look for interesting sources and information, and which ones to trust and which ones not to trust. And I think we always underrate that loss, that deep, deep loss. And on the other hand, the achievement that somebody who has lost all of their social capital and that trusted network, what it means when you still succeed in an entirely new environment, because you've had to try 3 times harder, 4 times harder to compensate for what you often have lost, and then to build and excel what other people and other young people in a similar environment have achieved. So let's keep pushing on the boundaries on labeling and framing. And you need to help us, I think, all of us, and if we put you in boxes, please fight back. Don't be polite. This is not going to change unless we collectively sort of keep shaking the boundaries of what's perceived as normal and acceptable, and how we are interacting and listening and engaging with each other. Now, the other key message that I heard, and please feel free to disagree with me, obviously, is that there is that incredible diversity of experiences and contributions, but there's also, I think, and we need to recognize this, that it's often within young people and youth communities that things don't necessarily always work perfectly either. And I'm saying this not because I want to criticize anything, but I'm just saying we need to, in order to get the change moving forward and untap that potential, there's huge work that I think needs to continue happening with youth to youth support. And I think, Mahmoud, you spoke about the sort of the youth to youth support, and including issues like xenophobia and racism among young people. The change, if a 60-year-old is xenophobic, it's a problem. But, in a way, the problem solves itself by life course. But if a 15-year-old is xenophobic, we have to deal with this for, probably another 60 years or 70 years. So really, I think we need to be also brutally honest about xenophobia, discrimination, stigma, stereotyping, exclusion, prejudice, our own biases in the sort of youth to youth, peer-to-peer world and participation. Because if you've got that figured out, or better figured out, you can be a lot more demanding on everyone else to also, follow your lead and figure it out. So that's just another reflection that I had as I listened to you. And then obviously I thought, I think you Alejandro, you said it, and a few of you also, that sort of, not being afraid to fail and innovate. There obviously isn't that one fix. And, it's great to see when a good idea sort of grows, like, Alejandro, you were saying you started in Colombia and then now it's in different countries and maybe even Mexico. But it does require continuous innovation, because the world around us, keeps moving and keeps changing. And I can imagine that the Ukraine situation in Europe is changing so many things again. So we need to kind of keep reinventing ourselves. Now, how do we do all of this in this sort of very narrow confines of the IMRF? I think what we need to do, and what I want us to, what I commit as UNICEF that we will do, we let's make sure that you get the maximum space that you can to bring these messages to the table. Let's be maybe more pushy even to make sure that before any delegation travels to New York, that they have consulted with young people, young migrants in their country. At least they've heard and listened, and they have your examples of innovation and good ideas in their pocket as they travel to New York for those meetings. In New York, there will be a number of events that UNICEF will be involved in. There is also the roundtable that the major group is co-convening with WHO. So there are a few sort of precious slots that you will have to represent, an entire community of incredibly diverse young people. So let's use those slots to get the messages across. And really, my last very personal reflection is that so much of it is about storytelling. I think just saying that you are the change, you are the future, doesn't convince, unfortunately, but it's the stories of success that we've heard many today, the stories of hard-earned change, impact, improving lives. Those are the stories we need to tell more. So please, let's make sure we can tell them collectively and we can tell them loudly, and we can, in a way, prove wrong all of those who say that migration has to be political, has to be hostile, has to be toxic, and has to be harmful. It doesn't have to be. It's completely inevitable. It's completely unnecessary that people suffer because of migration policies. And as we're seeing in Europe today, if there is a will, suddenly everything seems possible. So it's the will that we need. It's the will for change, the will for inclusion, the will to tackle xenophobia. And the job will not be done in the IMRF and after the IMRF, but it's a moment to push and push and push, and we will all be disappointed, as we always are with these UN processes. But the only way to move forward is to push and make that 1 inch of progress with your support. And then we are starting at the end of May with 1 inch ahead of where we are today. So that's all from my end. Really big thanks again. I look forward to reconnecting maybe with some of you in New York before and after. The work is not easy. You're doing such great and powerful and impressive big and small acts every day. It is with you that the change can happen. And thank you really again on behalf of UNICEF and on behalf of the major group colleagues, on behalf of IOM, on behalf of all of you for the time you take. Time is our biggest resource. So let's use it carefully. And I look forward to being connected again in another setting, in another forum. And in the meantime, let's hope things keep on getting better and not worse. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Verena, for sharing your insights. And with that, this concludes the end of our IMRF Dialogue series. On behalf of MGCY Migration, I'd like to once again extend our gratitude to IOM and UNICEF for co-organizing this dialogue. To our speakers, Roberto from IOM, Verena from UNICEF, and our youth speakers, Mahmoud, Bosa, Sarah, Alejandro, Carla, and Veronica for attending and sharing your insights. Thank you all to the audience for joining us. We hope you have taken away some food for thought on migration, and we look forward to engaging with you further on this road to migration IMRF. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao, ciao. Oh, there's a little one. Bye-bye.
Say hi.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.